This program is brought to you by Fortinet. Fortify your cybersecurity.
Welcome back. Cybersecurity risks have escalated rapidly thanks to countries like China and Russia weaponising advanced hacking groups and creating sophisticated deepfakes. Threat groups like the Chinese-backed Volt Typhoon and Salt Typhoon are targeting critical infrastructure both here in Australia and in other major economies around the world like the US. Additionally, the growth of artificial intelligence has helped cyber teams tackle threats, but it's also helped hackers create these deepfakes or impersonations of people, which can be used to scam money out of individuals, corporations and governments. Joining me now is Maiden from the cybersecurity company Fortinet. Glenn, thanks so much for your time.
Ed, thanks for having me.
Just talk us through the threat level at the moment. How big are the risks right now when it comes to cybersecurity?
The risks are very, very high and increasing. So you mentioned before some of these very, very sophisticated nation-state type of campaigns where they've hit some of the biggest companies in the world, telecommunications companies over in the US. And if you think of those telco companies, they're not small companies without, really good security and good people. They've got plenty of resources. So yeah, the hackers in some cases are doing very, very well.
Yes, Salt Typhoon and Volt Typhoon. Just talk us through, what are those groups exactly?
Well, in terms of the Volt Typhoon, that came out maybe about 12 months ago, and they were targeting a whole bunch of US infrastructure, US companies and US government entities. I think more, which was actually really, really quite devastating, but the Salt Typhoon attack was arguably a lot worse. So that was probably about a dozen or more of the biggest telecommunications companies in the US were targeted by this Chinese-backed group that they've called Salt Typhoon. And they managed to get all through those telecommunications providers to the point of being able to target Kamala Harris, and it was before the US election,
Right.
Donald Trump, JD Vance, they had SMSs, they had voice calls, they had geolocation of some of the most important people in Australia. They're all through.
So how do you stop things like this from happening then?
It is actually a real challenge, but I try not to be too pessimistic. I mean, it's not something where we just sort of throw in the towel and say, this is not something that cannot be defended against. That's absolutely not correct. I like to think there's two things that you can do and there's a US standard called NIST, but it's basically prevent, limit, recover. And we always focus on the prevent side of things. So, if there's the most minor of breach or the most insignificant of breaches, some people will be starting to wave their hands, there was a breach. But if you think of that limit and recover piece of NIST, well, if we can limit where the bad guys can go in our networks and what they can get, or if it's a ransomware or some sort of an availability type of attack, if we can recover really, really quickly, then that cyber incident is not as devastating as what it otherwise would have been.
Well, when you think about telcos in the US, there are some pretty old technology within those legacy systems. I mean, does it need a lot more investment to bring things up to the right level of protection?
I think, everything would need some investment. I think a lot of it, though, is around visibility and having really, really good security operational hygiene. So in a lot of cases, especially some of those old legacy environments, they're just sort of sitting around, chugging away. If it's an OT, it might be looked after by an electrician rather than someone that's a technologist. So they might not be looking for some of those threats. So the key answer is to make sure that you've got sensors in all those different parts of our business that are able to rapidly detect when something's unusual, and then you can either using AI to respond or a really good talented security operations. I just implied that I was a talented security operations analyst. That's not the case. But good, talented human. Then we can actually get on top of the threats really, really rapidly and make sure that they can't get away with very much in our systems.
Well, you mentioned AI. Just how smart are these state-based actors getting when they're using things like AI to create deep fakes and things like that?
Very good. So the stats at the moment is it's about 99% of humans, we could not detect a really good deep fake at this stage. So it's the way that it's the trajectory is just absolutely incredible. So we're at that stage where if you're on TV today, most people wouldn't be able to tell if it was a deep fake of you tomorrow. So that's how good they are. Where we are seeing other uses of things like LLMs is the bad guys will be using malicious generative AI to go through and build exploits and find vulnerabilities in things. And what that's resulted in is, in the good old days of probably about 12 months ago, it was weeks and months before, when there was a vulnerability, before the bad guys had worked out how to exploit that vulnerability and get that first sort of initial access to our systems. What's happened over the last sort of 12 months, that's all the way down now to only a few days. So
wow.
When a vulnerability is released, that means that our teams, our change management process have to get those patches out almost immediately before the bad guys are starting to sort of knock on the door. It's really, really tough.
So how do you stop a deep fake? Because I've seen some where there's been impersonations of Australian billionaires that have been offering financial advice over social media directly to me, and it does look pretty real, but how do you actually prevent it?
I don't think we can. I think my personal view is we're at a turning point now. So I've been creating deep fakes of myself for the last few years as the technology's been emerging, and I started off with some very, very, sort of modest voice synthesis and voice phishing attacks, as they call them, all the way through to sort of a full deep fake of myself. Up until recently, what I think is happening now is if you start to combine that sort of chatbot interactive, where we go and we can interact with ChatGPT or Grok, if you combine that with a deepfake, we'll find ourselves in a situation very, very soon where you can be speaking in real time with a deepfake, and not only will that be almost impossible to detect, the attackers will be able to do it at scale. So they'll be able to get not just one Ed talking to one victim at a time, they'll just get that Ed and they'll send it to 1,000 victims at a time, having unique conversations with the victims based on what's most likely to happen. So to answer your question, there is some technology and some work coming in to detect deepfakes, but like the rapid emergence of AI, that's still very, very novel.
It sounds so scary. Look, Glenn Maiden, Chief Security Officer and Director Threat Intelligence, Fortinet Australia. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Ed. Pleasure.